Jeff Johns had no integrity. Joss Whedon had no integrity. Walter Hamada had no integrity. Toby Emmerich had no integrity. And James Gunn certainly doesn't have any integrity. So DC Studios, which means doesn't also have any integrity. But there's worse to come, I'm quite sure. I expect many more revelations in the coming weeks and months about James Gunn, and there's no doubt about that. And my sources are telling me that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will be shelved for a tax write-off. That's what I'm hearing. I'm also being told that this decision is a direct reaction from the other flops. Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, the Flash movie, and Blue Beetle. Oh boy, what a disappointing flop that movie has been. So they've been talking for quite a while. The test screenings have been terrible. Gunn has been making changes upon changes, and there have been clashes between James Gunn and James Wan, and Jason Momoa hasn't been happy privately, no matter how positive he's been about James Gunn publicly. The whole thing is a mess, and to boot, you've got the Amber Heard situation. So I've been told they have made the decision to shelve Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I've been told you will not see the trailer for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now, we recently had a poster, which is interesting, which is weird. I mean, if my sources are correct, and they may be wrong, let's be clear. Take this with a pinch of salt. I'm not telling you this is definitely not going to be released. I'm telling you that there's a probability of it not being released via my sources. So they're saying this decision is a direct response to the flops, and especially Blue Beetle and the Flash movie was terrible. So it's looking like we'll never see that film. I don't know if that's a tragedy or a good thing, because I believe all of these movies should have been shelved. That would have been a ruthless decision, but the right decision to make. And you know, I was talking yesterday how I would have ended the DCEU with Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 ending everything in the right way. But that is not going to happen. But let's ask the question. If Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is shelved, how does that work? We know that James Gunn is, looking to do a soft reboot, that he's interfered with these movies. So if we don't see Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, then how does that work? Because the Flash movie wasn't exactly, a finite, definite ending for the DCEU. In fact, it just didn't make sense. As a movie, as a DCEU, DC Extended Universe movie, it didn't make any sense. As I said the other day, it doesn't scream, we get it now. We're now in James Gunn's DC Universe, because we're not. We don't even know where he ends up in the end is James Gunn's universe. It's clearly not, because Clooney's there. Could it be that he was just traveling through realities and that was one of them? Maybe, but it wasn't exactly clear, was it? And there's the problem with what Gunn has been doing. None of it makes freaking sense. There's no logic in what he's doing. Is there logic in shelving Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Of course. Because if they do not, that movie will flop, and we all know that James Gunn's interfered in that movie, so he'll be blamed again. It won't be a good look. But we'll see. Nobody knows for sure. But there's no trailer. We haven't had a teaser trailer. We haven't had an extended trailer. We haven't had anything apart from that behind the scenes footage that we saw at DC Fandom a while back. Nothing. So normally, how does it work? Well, to be fair, we had to wait quite a while for Blue Beetle trailers as well. Even for the Flash movie stuff, we had to wait quite a while. So it could be, it's the same thing here. But they're going to have to sell this movie. because this movie is their last chance to make money on DC this year. It could be the perfect write-off, because releasing this movie costs them money. If they know for a fact that they're not going to make any money from this movie, and of course we all know for a fact that this movie is going to be a freaking disaster, why would anyone release a movie they know is not going to work? Now, back in the old days, they would never have thought of not releasing a finished piece of content. Batgirl would have been released 30 or 40 years ago. No question about that. But these days, it's all about the box office, and it's all about the Rotten Tomatoes scores, the cinema scores. Well, clearly, this film isn't going to do well box office-wise, Rotten Tomatoes-wise, and it's certainly not going to have a positive film score. It's obvious that people are going to boycott this movie, especially because of Amber Heard, because of James Gunn, and this week's revelations have made the situation even worse. So they're in a bind here. They're in a big bind. They've got themselves involved in a situation that's very hard to dig themselves out of. There's lots of things they've already done wrong. Now, it'll be interesting how the public, how the DC fandom respond if Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is shelved. I mean, I don't know. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't think it's either. I would like to see the movie. I would like to see the original idea from James Wan and Jason Momoa, who helped to pen the story of this film. And of course, Aquaman fans, and we mustn't forget them, will feel robbed as well, because the first movie was a good depiction of Aquaman. It worked. It's a good movie. I don't care what the film's detractors say. It's a really good movie that made good money, right? And the reviews were solid. Some people thought the movie was a mess. I don't agree. But ultimately, the movie made money, and that's the most important thing. They have got themselves involved in a situation. That's all I say. They have handled the crossover from DCEU to DCU terribly. And we all know all they had to do was a clean reboot. That was it. They also got themselves in trouble over Henry Cavill. You know, they didn't know Gunn was coming in when they brought Cavill back. I don't know who was making these decisions. Was it The Rock? Was it Agby and DeLuca? Was it them together? Nobody really knows. These are strange decisions in the first place. And if you've got someone to bring back Henry Cavill, why are you replacing them with Gunn? Well, I know why you're replacing them with Gunn, because Black Adam was a flop. So this proves that Zaslav is reactive and the wrong man to be running Warner Brothers Discovery as a CEO, right? He also has no integrity. He's already shown us that. Saying doesn't make any money, he's just going to fire the people. How can you build something? This is what went wrong with Snyder. As soon as the movies didn't make the money they wanted, they were unhappy with Zack, tried to get him to change what he wanted to do, you know, sacrifice his artistic integrity. And then he was out the door when he fought them on those decisions. So nothing's changed at DC. DC Studios is no different to DC Entertainment. We've been hearing recently from the former president of DC Entertainment, Diane Nelson, who was also partnered up with Jeff Johns in running the DCEU a while back after Snyder had left. She hasn't got very flattering things to say about Jeff Johns. Clearly, it was a very uneasy partnership. As I say, Jeff Johns, Joss Whedon, Walter Hamada, and now James Gunn have no integrity. They do not have any integrity. James Gunn has repeatedly lied to us. And now, an uncertain future for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It's a mess, everyone. It's a mess of astronomical proportions. People working in an industry should have the experience to know what to do. Clearly, the DCEU was fraught with problems before Gunn came in, and Gunn was obviously tapped to deal with these situations. But here's the problem. James Gunn is a writer-director. He's not really a CEO. He's not an executive. He's not a producer. He has no experience to deal with situations like the crazy situations of the DCEU. He's just not tailor-made to do it. That's why he's making mistakes. I don't know whose decision it was not to do a fresh reboot, but if it was Gunn's, it's problematic. I don't think it's totally James Gunn's. I think James Gunn privately would have liked a fresh reboot, because anyone who doesn't want a fresh reboot is a lunatic, because you're creating problems for yourself. But as I say, Zaslav wanted Cavill back. Abby and DeLuca did that. Then he removed Abby and DeLuca as, the heads of DC and brought in Gunn. That's the decision that created a problem. And someone made the decision to remove Cavill, which was a huge problem because they clearly underestimated how popular Cavill was. And that was really the rod that broke the camel's back. I mean, I don't think people will cry over Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom being shelved as much as they did over Batgirl, because you've got these extremists, because she's a woman of colour, because it's this, because of that. All the extremists, all the woke people got very upset. It was all about their woke sensibilities. That's why they were upset with Zaslav, with the film getting shelved. It's always about politics more than entertainment these days, and yeah, that's a shame. That's very sad. So I don't think there'll be the fuss. It'll be interesting how people see this. But as I say, if they do shelve Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, what does that mean? What does that mean for the future of James Gunn and DC Universe? Well, it's an interesting situation, isn't it? And if they do shelve it, don't forget, Peter Safran's already backed David Zaslav, his boss of course, in shelving Batgirl. He publicly agreed with that decision on the launch of part 1 of the Gods and Monsters slate. It was a very interesting thing to say, to come out while you're promoting something new. They shouldn't have even been promoting that before these DCEU films were released. But these DCEU films, in my opinion, should never have been released. I said this. I said that The Flash should be shelved. I said it last year. I was doing lives and I said it, that it would be a disaster to release that movie starring Ezra Miller because of all the controversy. What happened? Everyone disagreed with me. What happened? What happened to the Flash movie was it was a fucking disaster, as I said it would be, and Ezra Miller fans were living in denial, right? And they're still arguing that that film's great, and they don't understand where the hate's coming from. Really? You don't understand where the hate's coming from? Well, if you don't understand where the hate's coming from, you really haven't been paying attention. Why don't you clean out your ears? Because none of you seem to understand what's going on, because you never pay attention. Somebody like me speaks and you just hear words, and you just hear what you want to hear. DC is in its worst state ever. It's in a worse state than it was under Snyder. It's in a worse state than it was under Johnson Berg. It's in a worse state it was under Hamada. Because they've come in and they've promised a brave new world. And I believe they can't deliver, or won't deliver that brave new world, because they're not even willing to do a clean reboot. You've given me a new Superman, but he's not in a clean reboot. Doesn't make sense. I mean, Henry Cavill was Superman. Clearly, to cast a new Superman, you need to do a clean reboot. But nah, because clearly what Gunn's going to say is, oh, like Barry rebooted the universe, some things stay the same, some things have changed. That's confusing. All you had to do, if you were going to change anything from the Flash movie, is to make it clear what Barry did at the end of the movie, that he rebooted the universe, and you didn't do that. You had one opportunity to make things clear, and you didn't do that. And now everybody is confused. I am staggered that people who have got such experience in this industry, well, let's not forget, Zaslav doesn't have experience in scripted entertainment. And that's the problem, because he's micromanaging this whole situation. So has Zaslav made the decision to shelve Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? I don't know, but I think it's a more unlikely scenario. I think that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is in such a bad state, and that's what I'm hearing, because of all the changes they keep on making. They created something that cannot be fixed. There's a version here, there's a version there, there's changes here, there's changes there. And then you've got to decide, well, which version do we go for? Oh, they're all bad. Let's do some more reshoots. So what's interesting about this, when they had the opportunity to delay the movie, they didn't. That doesn't mean that my source is wrong. Don't forget, it may be too soon for them to announce it now. They may not want to do that, right? They may not want to announce they've decided to shelve it now. It might not be the right time for them. In terms of Wall Street, you've got to be very, very aware of these situations. So just because it's not being announced as cancelled now or shelved now, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I mean, look, my source could be wrong. We could get a trailer very, very soon. But up to now, there's no official timeline or date for an Aquaman and a Lost Kingdom trailer. So it's very plausible that my source is correct, but also my source could be wrong. Sources sometimes get the wrong information. Now, everyone believes, because we got a poster the other day, that the film won't be shelved. They also could be buying time. Did we get any posters for Batgirl? I can't remember. I think Batgirl was a straightforward situation for Zaslav. In his mentality, this was the situation. I don't want to delay Shazam Fury of the Gods. I mean, I don't want to shelve Shazam Fury of the Gods. I don't want to shelve The Flash, because to them that had the highest potential. That's why they said that Tom Cruise loved it, and Stephen King came out and said he loved it as well. And it was all bullshit. They all lied. Because as I say, DC Studios, James Gunn and Peter Safran have no integrity, because they lied to you, they lied to me. They told us this was one of the best CBMs ever. They lied. And the thing is, when you know someone's a liar, when you know that, you're looking into someone's eyes and you know they're purposely lying to you, you know they've got no integrity. So then there's a lack of trust. When you've got a DC cinematic universe, you've got to be able to trust the people who are developing this stuff, the people who are in charge of DC's destiny. I simply don't trust James Gunn. And I'll tell you, I've had a lot of issues since he lied about the Flash movie, right? And certain other things. But it really was this week that, which was the rod that broke the camel's back. It's when I heard he said the stuff he said about Jack Nicholson, Christopher Nolan, and Tim Burton, my blood was boiling. And we'll see if I'm going to consume this DC Universe stuff now. Because I'm a big DC fan, I'm a big Superman fan. But I don't trust that man. Because he's lied. And as I say, if they do shelve Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, it will be very interesting to see how people react. For me, look, the movie, from what I'm hearing, is in a terrible state. It's more unreleasable than Batgirl. I don't believe Batgirl was unreleasable. I don't believe that. I think it was, let's say, definitely a woke movie. I think it would have angered people. I think it would have even underwhelmed people. It wouldn't have done very well, right? But the original plan was for that to be released on HBO Max. Zaslav wanted to reverse the decision of releasing movies on Max. But it was made for Max, so he knew you couldn't release it cinematically. Now, for some reason, he decided that Blue Beetle was releasable cinematically via the theatrical system, which always surprised me, because when I saw that movie, it just looked like something that was made for streaming. Well, guess what? It was something that was made for streaming. James Gunn has come in where other people's films have been released, where Walter Hamada's films have been released. He should have kept his mouth shut throughout this year. let these movies be released and do his own thing and have nothing to do with these movies. That would have been the best idea. But they're not, they're not just not clever. They are incompetent. Leaps and bounds incompetent. We're talking about elementary decisions, everyone. It's obvious, right? It's obvious you don't, if you're David Zaslav and all it takes is Black Adam flopping to basically, to allow the decision to bring Cavill back to be reversed, that's a problem. Because if you're that reactive, I'm wondering, if he's so reactive, what is his reaction? Since, we saw the reaction from Black Adam being a flop, how he reacted very, very quickly. He fired DeLuca and Abby as heads of DC Studios, allowed them to carry on being CEOs of WB Pictures, brought in James Gunn. That was reactive, allowed Gunn to reverse the decision to bring back Cavill. So we saw how reactive Zaslav was there. But then, we haven't really seen him react to the flop that was Shazam! Fury of the Gods, the flop that was the Flash movie, the disaster that was Blue Beetle. So, is his reaction after these 3 movies being released to shelve and get a tax write-off for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Well, if he reacted so aggressively after Black Adam, it's clear he was waiting to see how these other movies were going to do. And obviously, he was never certain that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was going to be released. But we're not hearing anything from James Wan or Jason Momoa anymore, right? So, yesterday they were spreading some bullshit. Who's that guy? Carlo Espinosa or whatever his name is. He's in The Mandalorian, plays the villain. Apparently Gunn's spoken to him about playing a DC character, and he said he wants to play a good guy, he doesn't want to play a villain. Isn't it convenient after all those revelations about Gunn, shitting all over Jack Nicholson, Christopher Nolan and Tim Burton, this guy comes out and says he had a discussion. A discussion doesn't mean anything, right? Doesn't mean nothing. It's all distractive tactics. There's no foundations over at DC Studios. And we've been lied again and again. But for the next few minutes, for the remainder of this video, I really want us to focus on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Because this should have been so exciting for Jason and James. Their idea could have been great, but the studio was interfering in terms of Hamada before even Gunn came in this movie, and didn't allow James and Jason to make the movie with the commentary they wanted. Of course, Hamada tried to get Amber Heard removed from the movie, citing bad chemistry between her and Momoa. Now, I don't think they had the greatest of chemistry in the first film, but this director was so good, it kind of worked. The romance worked, and she worked as Mira. I think she's a really, really good Mira. And personally, I hate what she did to Johnny Depp, but I didn't hate it that much that I didn't want to see her and I was going to boycott the movie. But Hamada did the right thing to try to remove her. But she's actually very, very smart. She kept the position on that movie. She clearly has, let's say, some brains up there, and she's not done. She's still in this industry. She's still fighting to remain in this industry. The only reason she ever was in this industry are her connections to Johnny Depp. It's the only reason she ever got involved with Depp. Happens all the time. In my Instagram DMs, I've got about 50 young women sliding in saying, "Hi daddy, are you going to give us some money?" "No, fuck off." Are you going to ride me for half an hour?" "No." "Then why would I give you any money?" "To look at my pictures." "Why do I want to look at your pictures?" "What are pictures going to do, man? Pictures are no good, right?" So anyway, so that's what happens. Young women try to get with richer older guys like her did with Johnny Depp. So it's a tragedy. You know, going back to Snyder, the only guy who's ever worked in this franchise who's actually talking about integrity and lack of it, Snyder's the only one, and his people, who have ever had any integrity, including his good wife. It was the perfect team. It was the perfect setup. You should have left them alone to do their thing, finish off what they were doing, and then start again. because how you've done it hasn't worked. And it's the same people who fired him who are doing this non-fresh reboot and are causing problems again. These people are incapable of making, an elementary decision. A decision that's surrounded in logic and common sense. And I don't know if it's a mistake to shelve Aquaman or whether they should release it or shelve it. I don't know what the right thing is to do. Well, in terms of a business and profits, it's obvious that you have to shelve it and get that money from the tax write-off because the movie isn't going to make any money. It's not going to make any money, everyone. That's obvious. Like we always knew that Black Adam wouldn't make money, like Shazam, Fury, the Gods wouldn't make money, The Flash, Blue Beetle. We knew it. It was obvious. You don't even have to be clever. You don't even have to be a box office analyst. So as a business, it's absolutely the right decision to shelve, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom as a tax write-off. Of course it is. But it's their fault. They've interfered with this film on a multitude of times. Abby and DeLuca, when they brought back Cavill, they brought in Ben Affleck to do a cameo for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now, at the time, we thought it meant something for restoring the Snyderverse. Now we're hearing it was just because they were removing Keaton, so they needed to replace, basically. And because of the scheduling changing all the time, that's why Affleck apparently came in. I still think that's bullshit. And Abby and DeLuca wanted to restore what Snyder had done. It was very exciting finding out that Ben was going to be in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And then Momoa was saying, well, maybe both Batmen are in the movie, which was weird. Was he lying as well? Well, Momoa, even though he came out a couple of years ago when they were talking about Frosty and saying he wasn't going to be in that movie and they were lying, recently I think he's been a lot more of a studio man. And he's really been getting his tongue up James Gunn's butthole. Which is also disappointing, but I understand a man's got it, even though he's very, very wealthy. I love Jason. He's got a lot of integrity. He's got more integrity than a lot of them. But, I wouldn't trust him either, as far as I could throw him. I don't trust any of these people in the industry today. New Hollywood doesn't have anyone with any integrity because no matter how problematic old Hollywood used to be, with abuse of power, rape, this, that, and other, right? At least they cared about the bloody art. At least they tried to entertain audiences. I'm not saying that's okay that they did the other stuff because they tried to entertain us. No, I'm just saying at least they did their damn jobs. They're not doing their jobs anymore. And this is where we are. What do I think the odds are of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom being shelved? Well, I think it's a 50-50 situation right now. I don't know if my source is right. She's a very, very, very good source. I would normally believe her, but I don't know at the moment what's going on. I think Zaslav is a very reactive man, and even if it is released and it flops, which it will flop, he'll take it out on Gunn. It's very interesting. It's better for Gunn. Clearly, he's trying to protect Gunn as well because he doesn't want to replace Gunn. But it's better for Gunn if this movie is shelved. Because after all the interferences that he's made with the film, he's part of the problem. If it is being shelved, he's one of the reasons. Gunn is one of the reasons. It's being shelved because he helped make, he didn't interfere with Blue Beetle, but he really did interfere with The Flash, right? I mean, that George Clooney thing was a mistake. Let me ask you a question. For those of you defending James Gunn and thinking he's going to do a grand job, Crypto the Superdog, blah, 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 Brave and the Bold, isn't it exciting? It's going to be like the comics. Well, let me ask you this. Do you trust a man who thought it would be okay to basically bring in the worst Batman to cameo as a joke in a Flash movie that doesn't bother to explain what's happened to the old DCEU universe and how this works for the future? Do you trust a man like that? Do you trust a man after Martin Scorsese had an article spitting facts about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel Studio, the destroyers of cinema, the takers of screens of independent studios and independent movies, and his reaction to Scorsese's New York Post article spitting facts was he's just trying to promote his own movie. This guy is the disrespecter and the shitter of the heads of iconic people. He disrespects iconic people. He disrespects fans. He disrespected Scorsese. He disrespected Nicholson, Nolan, Burton. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So no, I do not believe that Gunn has any integrity, that his DC Studios has any integrity, and David Zaslav definitely now has no integrity. Who knows what crazy thing could happen next? WB could bring someone else in to replace Zaslav because they can't sell the studio yet. Gunn could be replaced very quickly. Do not think that that can't happen. Basically anything, crazy could happen here. Because let me tell you something. We are on the Titanic and it isn't a sturdy ship.